G'day home brewers, this is Jeff. Welcome to another 15 minutes in the brewery. In this video, first up, I'm going to be doing a comparison between my vintage ale, which I brewed 3 months ago. It's been in the bottle now for 3 months and half a week, versus the 2022 Coopers, which I acquired recently. Now, I love the Coopers. Well, I don't love it. That's probably a little bit too strong. I like the Coopers. There's things I like about it, but there's also things I dislike about it, which is why I brewed my own. So I'm going to do a direct taste comparison. And I'm going to talk about those things that I like and dislike and how I change that with my beer and how I change it going forward. And also, if we get a little bit of time, I'm going to talk a little bit about another subject, but I won't mention that unless we get to it. So, first things first is we're going to pour these. Now, I've been putting this video off for 3-4 weeks because I want to do this. I want to actually compare this and show, because I'll show you guys the difference between mine and talk a little bit about it kind of head to head. Because I like vintage ale, I like the whole concept, and I love the one that I brewed. I really like it. So the reason why I've been putting it off is just they're both very alcoholic beers, 7.5 and 7.2%. So I'm going to pour both of these in the glasses, and yeah, I've got to finish them both, and that's going to pretty much do me for the rest of the night. And it's just been a matter of trying to find a night where I can drink two really strong beers side by side pretty much at the same time and get a little bit toasted and not have to worry about the kids or not have to worry about going anywhere or doing anything. So family's inside, they're all fine, wife's looking after them. We're going to do this taste test. So without any further waffling, I'm going to crack both bottles and pour them both into these hopefully clean glasses. Alrighty, we're going now. Can't go back. Alright, Coopers. Coopers is also a bottle conditioned beer. So actually pouring it really slowly. I don't want the yeast in this. Oh, stopping. Oh, I've got a little bit of yeast in. I didn't want the yeast in it because I want to try and show it kind of clear versus mine. Damn it, got a bit of yeast in. Oh. It's supposed to be good for your guts, the yeast. I don't know. Straight up, just from the bottle, the Coopers this year has quite a melon note to it. Now, I actually think they put Huel melon in it this year. So Huel melon must push like actual melon flavor, I guess. Because it's actually quite a fruity vintage ale, fresh. So last year was quite fruity as well. It's a fresh beer. Last year they brewed it with that other Australian Eclipse, and it was really nice fresh. I preferred it straight up when I bought it than aged for 6 months. So but the 2 years before that I had, but 2019 and 2020, I didn't really like either of them. I didn't really like them fresh. They were really harsh. They tasted like they needed to be aged, but when you tasted them, you kind of thought to yourself, well, what's going to improve? And yeah, they didn't really improve that much. And I've actually still got bottles of both that I may one day do a 3-way comparison, but we'll just stick to this one for today. Alrighty. Let's get mine in there. Straight away, I can tell you from my visual, from my perspective, the colors are pretty damn close, let me tell you. Mine's obviously darker. It's obviously a much darker shade. I'll show you. Coopers in the left, Coopers, mine. So color is similar, mine is just darker. So mine's a much darker orange than the Coopers. But I'm actually surprised about the similarity. It's actually a bit closer than I thought it was going to be. So there you go. Now, the first big difference that I want to talk about, that I want to address, and I think I addressed this in the first video where I talked about my vintage ale a few videos back, is the body. This is my beer. My beer has a much thinner body. It's not thin by any means, but it's a lot thinner than the Coopers, and I'll show you in a second exactly what I mean, because I actually got a little bit of yeast in that, and I can show you the body in the Coopers from the yeast. See, my beer is completely different. Obviously, I didn't use a fruity hop in my beer, like Huell Melon or any of those hops. I used Topaz? Yeah, Topaz. Topaz is fairly fruity. It can be fruity, but Topaz is apparently, it's an Australian hop, but apparently it's good for high gravity brewers. Apparently it shows its character more in higher gravity beers. So this only got to 7.2%, probably at the lower end of where they were saying that it would express its characters. I'm not 100% sure. But mine is definitely straight up, it's maltier, so it's more malty on the palate. The Topaz has a nice flavour, nice taste to it, but you also get the Belgian character from the yeast, because I use BE256, 2 packets of it, the Belgian yeast, and mine definitely has that Belgian-y character. Which I think really goes well with the Topaz and the grain bill, and the level of bitterness. I think that that yeast, that combination really works well. And then as your palate kind of dries out, you get that after bitterness, that kind of that dryness on the back of your palate, and it makes you want to keep going back. You're like, oh, I need to have another sip now. But I think I talked about that in the last video. Now, let's go back to the issue of viscosity. And I'm going to get pretty, hang on. I've got to hold this because I'm going to lose it. Put that there. Now, I hope you can see this. The yeast in this beer is actually sitting suspended in solution. It's not dropping to the bottom. And the reason why is because this beer is so viscous. I mean, viscous is thick. I'm pretty sure viscous is thick. Just a quick rabbit trail, bunny trail. Viscosity is one of those concepts which I have tried in my head to figure out for like years, 20 years, 30 years. It's really weird. I can never remember whether more viscous or less viscous is thick. This is thick. So if it's more viscous, then this is really viscous. But you can actually see it. You can actually see the yeast particles in suspension. Hang on, where's the switch on this? This just might help you see it, just in case you can't. Oh my goodness me. There we go. You should be able to, I should be able to get that on video. And it's got a very syrupy like, and actually those yeast particles in there will actually help to show up the syrupy kind of character, I think. It's very thick. And that is probably the biggest thing I dislike about the Coopers is that viscosity. I do not like a really thick viscosity. It kind of, it's like cough syrup. It really is. You know, people talk about a beer being cough syrup consistency. To me, it's like cough syrup. It's creamy mouthfeel, but it's really thick. Really thick. And yeah, it does. It has that little bit of a cough syrupy feel about it. I just don't like that. I don't like beers that have that, a really thick mouthfeel like that. I just do not like that at all. Actually, I'm going to take just going to pause for a second. I'm going to take a shot. A thumbnail. Now, the other thing I don't particularly like about the Coopers, or at least the last few that I've tried, and I've only been buying these since 2019, is until they went to the fruitier hops, they were very harsh beers when they're fresh, when they're young like this, only a couple of months from being packaged. Very harsh beers. Not the kind of beers that you could drink young and then would improve with age. You know, some wines taste okay young, but they just get better and better and better as they age. I think there's actually a thing in winemaking. I think this is true. If a wine doesn't taste great when it's young, it's not going to improve as it ages. So I'm not 100% sure why the coopers make their vintage ales so harsh on the palate when it's fresh. I mean, sure, it'll probably mellow over time. It probably will mellow out. But 6 to 12 months is when you want to be drinking these, I think. I don't think you really want to leave these for several years or a decade or more. Why would you want to store this stuff in your cupboard for a decade? I don't know. And as much as I like the a little bit of fruitiness from those New World hops, or the Huell melon, which is fairly New World, I guess, I just can't get past that palate. I can't get past the mouthfeel, sorry, the thickness of it. I can't get past it. When I go back to mine, the difference between the two in aroma, the big difference is the Coopers in this hand is fruity. Definitely has that Huell melon, and you can smell the malt in the background, but you can smell the Huell melon hops. When you go into mine, the first thing you get, Belgian, that BE 256. It just hits you right in the nose straight away. Yeah, it's got that really nice kind of Abbey yeast aroma to it. Really nice, but not phenolic. Not phenolic. The Abbey yeast. I think the Abbey yeast is the one that's not phenolic. Not phenolic at all. And when you go in, it's malt. You can taste the malts. I could taste the different malts. I can actually taste I'm pretty sure I can taste the amber, and I'm pretty sure I can taste the dark crystal in this, and the brown malt. It has a malt complexity. I think that's what I'm trying to say. There's a complexity to the malt bill in this that does come through on the palate that you just really don't get in this beer at all. You don't really get a malt complexity in it. And in my mind, I mean, for me, if I was going to produce a beer, which I was planning on aging, it's not going to be a hop forward beer. It's going to be something with an interesting malt bill. Some kind of interesting malt, maybe a rye or a crystal rye or a chocolate rye or some chocolate oats, roasted oats, something interesting. And then pair that with a really nice aromatic yeast like a Belgian yeast or an English ale yeast that produces a really nice aromatic character to the beer and adds some real character. For me, that's the kind of beers that I think I would age, that I would make to age. I wouldn't have thought of making a beer which is fruit dominant on the palate, because after a while, that fruitiness from the hops, that's just going to fade away. And if this beer doesn't have the malt backbone to be able to hold its own after the fruity hops are gone, then what's the point? Anyway, that's where I'm at with these two beers. I really actually prefer my own. As much as I appreciate what Coopers does with their vintage ales, and I do appreciate this fresh with the fruitier hops, I just don't think it's going to age well, and I don't like the syrupy character, the syrupy mouthfeel. It's almost like there's only two things going on. The Huell melon, or three things. The Huell melon, the fairly restrained malt bill, sorry, and the bitterness. Quite a lot of bitterness. Probably 50, 60 IBUs. Mine was 85. 85. See, my beer, it comes across, the dryness just slowly comes in. After you've sipped it, after you've swallowed, 10, 15 seconds, maybe 20 seconds, your palate really starts to dry out. It's like a dryness, like a almost verging on a bitterness, but a real distinct dryness, and it just comes in slowly and builds and builds. Whereas the Coopers, it's like a really strong bitterness up front, or sorry, no, kind of the mid palate, but it fades fairly quickly. Where the Cooper's bitterness starts to fade off your palate, my beer, the dryness really starts to kick in. And I like that. Anyway, that's it. I thought I'd compare the two because I did make this in order to make a version of a vintage ale that I really liked. And they're trying to make a beer that had kind of fixed the things which I didn't really like about the Coopers. And you know, I think I've succeeded. Yeah, would I make it lighter? I'm not sure. I don't mind the color, to be honest. Maybe a touch too much brown malt. Maybe I could make it a bit lighter. I think the Coopers is a bit, it's really amber. I say the Coopers is amber. It's like an amber ale, really thick amber ale, cough syrupy amber ale. But I actually don't mind the color of mine. I think mine is coming more towards maybe a Belgian quad, maybe? I'm not 100% sure. Dark strong, or strong dark, sorry, is darker than that. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think I would change much about mine, to be brutally honest. Maybe drop the IBUs a tiny bit, maybe, maybe not. I don't mind that dryness. My mouth right now is quite dry. Not overly dry, it's not astringent. It doesn't pucker your mouth. But I feel like going back. I keep wanting to go back to wet my palate again. And then when I go back, it's like, oh, that Belgian-y, oh, the malt bill. I can taste the amber and the brown malt and the crystal, the dark crystal, and oh, it's beautiful. And then the process repeats. So there you go. So thanks for watching this video. I hope you did get something out of this, and if you're considering brewing a vintage ale and you like the Coopers and you get the Coopers and you drink it and you're thinking about doing it yourself, I hope you got something out of it. And you could always hit me up for questions about vintage ale. I really like my version, and this is version 1 for me, so I'm really happy with how it's come out. I'm really pleased that I was able to address some of the issues that I dislike about the Coopers and create something of my own, which I really enjoy. There is another one in Australia that makes one. I've got a bottle of it inside. I may review it. I'm not 100% sure yet because I've never really been super happy with their beer either. But it's one of those beers where they talk about, you know, super complex grain bills and things like that. And anyway, look, cut a long story short, this is what I'm happy with. And if you've got questions about how I brew my vintage ale and any advice and things like that, just let me know. So otherwise, I'm just waffling, and I'm gonna let you go. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next video. Cheers.